Our next presenter will talk about moving towards cyber technology. And please welcome Dr. Fragkos.
Cheers, thank you. Well, it's going to be hard for me to just stand here, but I'll try to do my best to make sure that I'm in frame. Well, thank you for being in this talk. Well, this is me. And the whole talk today is about cyber resilience. And what I've tried to do is basically give you an introduction of where the security industry is going. But because of my background, I wanted to put it in a hacker's perspective. So the talk today, basically, I want it to be interesting, but I want it to be educational as well. And I hope I'll try to do that, and I hope I'll succeed. So a brief introduction about me, for those of you who don't know me. Basically, I do consider myself one of those, even though I'm not one of those. This is not how I dress when I go to work, and these are not my casual Fridays. I've never had problems with these guys, because a good hacker never gets caught. Think about it. Actually, I've helped them a lot of times to solve some stuff and catch some criminals. I've worked with these guys, but as you can understand, I can neither confirm or deny anything. I'm also the main organizer for Security B-Sides Athens. So next year, if you want to go to Greece and have your holidays and also come to the conference and present the talk, or I don't know, come for the drinking only, I don't know, just consider checking it out. It's next June. And I got myself recently involved with organizing B-Sides Amsterdam as well. Other than that, I do stuff for fun as well, which is I do talks in various places in various countries. I can fly a 737-800, and I'm known for hacking POS devices and PCI systems and things like that. So that's it. So this talk is about familiarizing the audience with the term cyber resilience and how this holistic approach to information security problems today will basically allow us to better ourselves in most aspects of cybersecurity when it comes to safeguarding our companies, organizations, businesses worldwide. What I'm trying to say here is that people that come from a technical background, people that are basically consider themselves ethical hackers, people who are considered themselves security professionals, they see the vulnerabilities in front of them. They test the systems, and as we saw earlier today, which the amazing talk about the USB stuff and the tone sent over the asterisks and all that stuff. You need to keep a broad and open mind of how many things you can attack and how you can attack them. When it comes to systems and when it comes to security, if you take these things individually, and you're trying to secure an infrastructure, you're trying to secure a business, you're trying to work for your employer in order to work for a business, right? To have clients and go and move forward. When you're generating those reports, people tend to see the problem from a one dimension or 2 dimensions only, while the problem is an n-dimensional problem. Cyber resilience basically is trying slowly to integrate a lot of industries and a lot of different perspectives when it comes to securing infrastructures. Apparently, it seems that the term by itself, no, but the term will introduce the idea that the board needs to change the way they see things. As it can be, at Cyber Resilience is trying to be measurable and is trying to be effective without actually spending more of the company's budgets. And I will give you examples of what I mean about that. What we actually need to do in order to move forward is to bridge the gap between the ethical hacker and the board of directors. So when you go into, you probably, I mean, this is a room full of pen testers and security professionals. When you do a pen test, when you do your security assessments, usually what you see is that people focusing on how they got in, how they got to get like domain admin, or how they exploit up a specific vulnerability, on how they went around into bypassing some checks and making doing basically SQL injection, for example. Yes, that's fine, that's great, but what is the real impact for the business? So when someone reads that report that you give, even though technically it might be sound, it might be the most amazing report you've ever wrote, when the executive, when the IT manager, when the security manager takes these reports into their hands, the only thing they see is vulnerabilities for them, that somehow they need to patch it. They don't actually understand the impact of what you've discovered. And that's half of the problem there relies with them, not going into depth, understanding it, but there is a responsibility there from your side as well to explain what you have discovered and what you are trying to tell them. I hope I'm making myself clear where I'm trying to push this talk to go after. So understanding cyber resiliency. In a term, it goes beyond business continuity plans, and it goes beyond disaster recovery. It's not about only the theoretical things. It needs to include everything. It's a broad, holistic approach to address cybersecurity challenges that include readiness, response, and recovery at a broad ecosystem. When you have a bank, for example, it has other priorities, and other systems are considered to be its ecosystem, so you need to adjust your approach accordingly compared to have an infrastructure that simply stores personal information, for example. Cyber resilience will start, demands basically the collaboration of the board, the technologists, the involvement of third parties, cybersecurity experts, while responsibilities, regulations, and compliance issues have been clarified and tested. What we mean by that is that it's not only about you performing a pen test. It's not only about having internal or external teams running some security assessments. We're talking about engage with, as we saw earlier on, with third-party software that is being introduced into the company. We need to start understanding what is the impact of when you get information and when you have different departments collaborating with each other. So, what are the challenges going forward with the cyber resilience? Is that we don't have traditional networks anymore. They're way more complicated than they used to be. And you need different experts to focus on different kind of parts in the assessment. Usually, you get businesses that they go on to do a project. The team is basically, the on-site team, it might be 2 people. And there is infrastructure penetration test, to a web application test, to a Wi-Fi test, to a physical security test. There are all sorts of tests there, mobile assessments and things like that. And you have 2 people trying to do everything they can in the amount of time they were given. It's beyond reasonable doubt that gaps will be left untouched, and gaps will be introduced in the outcome of the report, because 2 people cannot do everything that they've been asked to do. There are attacks against heterogeneous systems, which means, as I said, there are attacks that need to be considered when we're going towards securing infrastructure. There are attacks against the wireless network, there are attacks against the software, there are attacks against the hardware. Conventional methods of detection. We used to have antiviruses, and we were so happy for building antiviruses. And now everybody's saying that, antivirus is not enough. It doesn't do what it's supposed to be doing. And counter-involving threats. We are reaching a point where we are trying to catch up to the cyber criminals. We are trying to catch up to the threats that we're trying to mitigate, right? We haven't been, even though we have so much technology available to us, we haven't been into a position to be proactive and think ahead. Try to be 1 step ahead of the game. Another challenge is the dynamically assigned resources. And that's basically in different industries, it's a different game, basically. You have the gaming industry, for example. They need to be online 24/7, and they need resources on the fly. And those resources, they need to be secure. The amount of challenges that you have there is tremendous. You have the stock market, where they can take down systems, but again, the minor mistake or the minor vulnerability will have tremendous consequences compared to the fintech or compared to basically a bank or an acquirer or a payment processor. You need to have fast adaptation and scalability. And that means that if you are going to patch a 0-day or a problem that is introduced today in 2 months, then you are not acting fast enough. So it's not about the pen tester identifying the problem 6 months down the line. It's about the way that we work in order to be there to make sure when the problem occurs, when the 0-day is being discovered, we know which plans we're going to initiate in order to make sure that we can fix it. Sometimes we need to have a backup system and test it in real time, but we need to make plans to do that. It's not only about identifying vulnerabilities anymore. And in general, we need to have a holistic approach to the cybersecurity posture. If you are a business owner, you want to make sure that you're not going to go out of business because of a minor mistake someone did. You want to know where you're standing at. You want to know if your passwords are going to be leaked online because someone is allowed to create access points to your systems, rogue access points. You need to understand at which level your security posture is at the moment, due to the complexity of all the infrastructure and the systems that are in place. And how can we do that? Basically, we need a strategy. We need to sit down, communicate with everybody in a business. We need to communicate with fellow pen testers on how we approach the problem, not just follow a procedure and a methodology. The problem is becoming so dynamically challenging that one person cannot solve it. Simple as that. There is the need, obviously, for the boards to understand the need for cyber resiliency and identify major risks, which is the cyber resiliency risk assessment, basically. The current exposure to threats, vulnerabilities, mission-critical systems, and high-value targets. As I said, different industries have different requirements, and they will have different priorities. Right now, we hear about companies being breached and hacked because no one is talking about it. We're taking the same approach for everybody. You need to do patch management, you need to do a vulnerability assessment, and you have to have this compliance in place. Everything is fine, tick the box, good to go. It's a plain thing. But as you understand, we need to start approaching the technologies in a priority based on what we are, based on the industry that we're working into. A shipping industry has a different requirement compared to an aerospace industry, and no one is talking about it at the moment. We're just talking about vulnerabilities in general and 0 days. So what? If I have a 0-day on my bicycle, I don't really care, to be honest, if compared to having a business and having a 0-day to my application server. That's two completely different things. Communicate across all departments and build an up-to-date cyber risk profile for the company, of the company. I'll give you a very good example. And actually, this happened here in Serbia a few years back when I visited for work. I was in a very big company, and each door had a lock with a PIN or RFID, right? Everything was locked. There was security in the main entrance, and you were being escorted to the office that you wanted to go. However, once you were there, like, we're talking about the scenario of an internal attacker here. Once you were there, you could go wherever you wanted. But all the rooms were locked and you needed an RFID card. So it depends on your level. You couldn't access specific parts of the building, or you couldn't access sensitive servers and things like that. In a discussion that I had with the CISO at the time, I've noticed that something is not quite right, as they say. So we sat down to start doing some tests and some assessments. So what they said to me is that in order for an external consultant to come in and connect their laptop into the network, we will need to know their MAC address. Good, because we have port security, and it's the best thing in the world. Yes, congratulations, this is a very good thing. For those of you who doesn't know, basically port security, what it does, if you unplug a system from the Ethernet port and you try to plug in your laptop, if it's not the MAC address of the actual system, it won't talk to you. Okay, simple as that. So you didn't have access to any Ethernet ports if you didn't have access to the rooms. So there is a level of security there. Oh, sorry. Did I change anything? No. Okay. What happened at the end of the day is that by discussing with the CISO this issue, I said to him, do you know that you might have port security, but I'm pretty sure it can bypass in 10 minutes. Because they didn't think of a very, very simple thing. Everybody had access to the open access printer rooms, which means you could walk into the building, or you could walk around the building, go into a printer room because it was access for everybody. You didn't require a card or a pin or anything to go in. You tap the keys on the printer and you print the test page. The test page has the MAC address of the printer. You unhook the printer and you hook your laptop, and you have changed your MAC address to that MAC address before you hook it up. And basically you get access to the network. It takes about 5–10 minutes to do. So they didn't think this holistic, they didn't have this holistic approach to the problem. Someone sold port security and that was it. It was done. The same thing happened with a company that wanted to buy a parking system, right? It was a chain of hotels that they wanted to buy a parking system. And the CFO decided that this is the best price and the best product, and the guy said this is amazing. Fine, why not? It was a CFO decision. Instead of informing the CISO or the security officer or the security manager or the security architect to have a look at it, to get a second opinion. All the decision was based on price. What they discovered that in 6 months' time, the whole system was out of date. It was a legacy system because, first of all, it was part of PCI, and it was based on Windows XP. So they spent $2 million for nothing. So do you understand? A decision that cost the company a lot of money. And it was like child's play. You could ask like a first-year student in security, and we'll tell you that you're not supposed to do that. If you look down the road in 6 months, 8 months, XP will be obsolete. You're not going to be using it anymore. So the system you are buying is out of date already. So we're basically here. So I don't know if you know that, but the cyberspace is now called the fifth domain of warfare. So if you don't know that, you need to look on Wikipedia. However, it's becoming slowly, but it has become for some companies a realization for those who have already been breached, right? And especially with GDPR coming, there are going to be tremendous fines. But there are also those who haven't detected it yet. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when you have a big company, usually it takes them about 250 days to detect a breach if the data is not dumped online. So we're talking about almost a period of 6–8 months before they actually detect that they've been hacked. And it's 2017, and we have all these systems in place, and we have all this technology in place to make sure that we can do the right, we can take the right decisions in order to monitor all that stuff. The other thing that they don't take under consideration is the static approach. Basically, they take the static approach. They treat security as a product, as an out-of-the-shelf product. While we involve with the systems, and while we make new systems every year, for example, the threats will counter-evolve. It's simple as that. We cannot stay static with our solutions and with the decision that we make towards security. When it comes to protecting, securing this kind of systems, this kind of businesses, this kind of infrastructures, we need to start thinking like the attackers. And what I mean by that, it's start thinking basically outside of the box. Like in the previous talk, where the guys wanted to test how they can bypass the systems with the tones. That's actually a very, very effective way of hacking systems, right? It will take, I don't know, I guess it will take a couple of years before people actually implement this in a standardized form and trying to do it. I mean, not only your company, but you know, in every company, to introduce this kind of testing. We're not progressing fast enough, while we should. So another little story is this one, because it gives you basically the idea of thinking outside the box. In 2014, hackers started using NTP reflection attacks. Have you heard of this incident? Right? Basically what they did, they managed to attack a company by attacking the NTP servers of the country this company's servers were located. Who could thought about it? Well, if you start thinking outside the box, maybe it's part of your decision plan of what's going to happen if. But no one thought about it, but no one were doing anything about it. So they were not monitoring correctly. They didn't have a backup plan. They didn't have a response plan to this kind of scenario. Before the attacks happened, however, there was a test run. So if they had effective mechanism for monitoring what is going on the network, they would see a little spike. And they would turn around and say, why are we seeing this? So they had enough time, basically, to make a decision of how they are going to react, more or less. So you don't want to end up being basically this guy, especially if you're following the news and if you're following what is happening at the moment, with government data being dumped due to a simple SQL injection. Equifax, have you seen that? I mean, it's all over the news now. We're talking about millions of accounts affecting the US and Europe from this company. They were hacked because they had a simple vulnerability that they didn't patch for 2 months. And the Alina post malware was mentioned this morning, and basically 2 days ago, a variation of Alina exact post affected Elasticsearch servers. Again, it could have been prevented easily. So why are we still seeing these things? Are we not doing a good job? We're not informing them very well? Is it so difficult to make the appropriate steps in order to patch a system or monitor what's going on? Especially now that the technology is changing and becoming more affordable for everyone. We shouldn't be afraid of the unknown. The visibility across the whole infrastructure is mandatory. And you see companies going out, buy firewalls, expenses, IPSs, and having an IDS in place. And when you ask them, how do you actually see what's going on? They say, you know, we go through logs. And that's it. And it takes us, how long does it take you to respond to something? I don't know, 2 months, 30 days, depends. Depends how our workload, or who is on leave. We don't see companies going down the road of identifying mission-critical systems. When you engage into a pen test, come on, raise your hands. You are given a list of IP addresses, right? Has anyone been given a list of IP addresses and given a priority list of on how critical its system is by the client? Has anyone ever had that? Because most of the times they don't even know what they have. Have you ever been given the wrong IP addresses when you're conducting a pen test? Come on, don't be shy. No one? Come on, it's like a common mistake. Or they're giving you IP addresses which not even theirs. Yes, it has happened, and you need to verify. Yeah, see? And you need to verify before you start, just in case, and you have to double check. Defend against emerging threats. If you are running a security assessment, if you're running a pen test, and you are looking for vulnerabilities in 0 days that they were out there 3 months ago, it doesn't really make sense. If there is a 0 day that is coming out today, and you don't check for it in 5 days, in 10 days, you're going to miss it. You're definitely going to miss it. Yes, AI and machine learning, they're coming about, but they were around since the 70s. And there is a lot of academic research on AI and machine learning. Anyone who is trying to tell you that machine learning is the god and it will solve all your problems and security will be beautiful and rainbows and unicorns, they're lying, basically, right? When you go to InfoSec, for example, some companies are trying to sell products, basically, that now they're using machine learning and they are the best, but no, they're as good as they can be. And also, something that no one is discussing is that with machine learning, even though it's easy to do some tasks a little bit better, also you can actually train the system in the wrong way. So if you know what's going on behind the system, you can actually train it with events and different other tricks to understand a type of attack in the wrong way. So to classify it as a false positive, basically. And in your responses, in the way that things are done, in the way that you're treating vulnerabilities and problems and systems, respond in real time, react and respond in real time. Addressing a problem a week or a month later, it's going to hit you. It's going to be a real problem if you don't fix it as soon as possible. And also, you need to understand that cyber criminals, because I assume that everybody in this room is an ethical hacker, right? Are opportunists. They will go for the low-hanging fruit, basically. They won't waste. If it's a targeted attack, they won't waste their time if it starts becoming a little bit more difficult for them to attack you. They will do their reconnaissance and they might come back to you. But if you have fixed the little things, by the time they come back to you, they will face exactly the same problem. They will need to spend a lot more time in order to ensure that they'll find a vulnerability. Because most of the targeted attacks, it's based on this trick. They do the reconnaissance, IPS goes up, blocks the IP for a week, for a day, for whatever, for a month, doesn't really matter. They know which application server you're running, you know the versions, and they just wait for the 0 day. Or they just wait for the IPS, for a vulnerability that the IDS has or the IPS has in order to bypass it. That's it. You've spent, especially if you work for a bank, you might have spent millions and millions on security, and then you are being bypassed just because you didn't act fast enough. So we need to understand both the testers, the security professionals, the penetration testers, and the executives. I'm going to call them executives, like IT managers and all these guys. What is the process when it comes to securing their businesses, their organizations, their infrastructures, right? They need to know what it means I'm securing it. They need to know what it means I'm monitoring what is happening. They need to know how to break down detection and prediction, right? And then they need to understand how they can conduct prevention, while they need to accept in their hearts that they're going to get hacked one day. And so they need to know how they're going to respond and how they're going to recover. No one is immune to security issues because there isn't 100% security. You cannot predict everything, but you need to know how you're going to react. You need to know how you're going to respond. You need to know how you're going to recover. So how can we do that? Simple tips. Secure as fast as possible. Again, it's crazy. You create a penetration test report, and the problems, how long do you think they take to fix them? I've seen issues being fixed after 3 years. I was told about a company that had 274 critical vulnerabilities on their servers last week. 274. I've never seen 274 in one go. Critical vulnerabilities, not medium and lows and information and all that stuff. So try to fix problems, the little problems on the fly. Try to prioritize immediately and effectively. Fix the problem faster than your systems can currently detect these problems, which means try to think a little bit ahead. Try to fix problems that they're going to be there in 6 months' time. If you're listening, if you're hearing that SSL, because I'm going to go, this is a very big issue. It was a big issue for PCI as well, because we mentioned PCI earlier. We had to stop using SSL3 and we had to move to TLS1, right? At some point. And if you're listening, a company that they spent all their money and all their effort into keep using SSL3 and putting their compensating controls in place, they are going to fail. It's 100% they are going to fail, because in 6 months, in a year, they won't be ready to do TLS1 correctly and move to TLS 1.1 and 1.2. That's why these are the reasons why some companies, and we're talking about major companies, are getting hacked. The only commonality in some cases is anomaly on the network. Yes, there are advanced persistent threats, and there are state-sponsored threats. But if you are doing monitor correctly, if you don't know how to do it, that's fine. Say, raise your hand and say, I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, I need training. But they need to train you. If you don't know how to do it and you need training and you need someone else to come in and help you, ask for the help of someone else. Instead of just closing your eyes and say, you know, if I detect it, I detect it. If there is a problem, you know, I'll find it on Pastebin, basically, because I'll see my account being leaked. Move towards trying to detect unknown threats instead of just discovering vulnerabilities by a vulnerability scanner. And have contextual awareness of what's going on. I've seen companies, major companies, when you ask them, how many web application servers do you have? And the answer is, we don't know. 80% of the time. Or the other answer is, I'll tell you in a week. Why will it take you a week to answer to me? Let's say that tomorrow there is a vulnerability with the web application server. How do you know how long it will take to fix it? Or how long you should expect it to be fixed? How long it to take to be fixed? So, going towards the cyber resilience strategy, what do we mean? Again, we need to take into consideration the whole ecosystem, and we need the penetration testers, the professionals, and those executives. They need to start working together, basically, right? Ensure that a holistic, and especially this is for people who are going to raise in the corporate ladder over the years, and they're going to be in positions of power, right? You need to ensure that a holistic security posture, internally and external, is in place, basically. You know what is your status at any given time. It's not a surprise to hear that 80% of attacks can be prevented with a few simple proactive measures and a preventive culture. And that's not me, that's the Center of Internet Security. 80%. Be meticulous by using services that provide solutions to your specific problems and needs. Highly adjustable solutions. Don't try to buy an antivirus. I'll give you this example again. There was a company that they decided to go and do the clever thing and go buy 2 different antiviruses from 2 different vendors, right? But if you don't do your research correctly, you end up buying 2 different antiviruses that they're actually using the exact same engine behind it, this exact same detection engine. So if you don't know what is the detection engine of your antivirus, there is something you're not looking into the problem very closely. So there is no point of spending the money buying exactly the same product, basically, that has a different interface. Focus on scalable, rapidly deployable solutions and forward-looking. I mean, GDPR is coming. You need to make sure that privacy of systems, you know, private information are stored correctly, encrypted, and all that stuff. There is a very famous tweet online talking about there was a guy who was developing some code about encrypting stuff, and he was basically using base 64. And he was claiming that he was encrypting the data. The problem wasn't with this guy. This guy might have done a mistake, but some manager or some his boss, in the chain of command approved this, or he never looked at it. So do you see the problem there? We cannot know it all, but that's why we have specific process and procedures, and someone should have picked it up. Like with Apple a few years ago when they got hacked because of one, after 3 source code reviews, they didn't pick up one little semicolon. Flexible, include IoT, SCADA. You need to have this holistic approach when you have the cyber resilience. And again, adaptive culture. If you are assessing system that has to do with financial gain, learn about fraud. Learn how this can be, how someone can use an approach. Maybe you need to learn a little bit of threat modeling and see the problem from a different perspective and understand how fraud works. Again, I'm saying it again, ensure visibility across the whole infrastructure. It's very, very important to know what you have and what is your status at any given moment, while knowing yourself, know what you have, know what your systems are, know when your systems are going to become legacy systems, and identify your mission critical assets. Again, towards for the executives and the managers, or for you guys, in a few years, or now if you're working for big companies, treat the need of cybersecurity in a systemic way, identifying gaps and risk across the whole organization and the business. Stop introducing cracks and weak points by treating security in an ad hoc manner. A little bit security here and a little bit security there leaves you this gap, right? It gets more expensive trying to run around like a headless chicken, trying to fix things here and there. While you don't take a step back, look at what you have, make the right decisions, prioritize what you're going to do, know where you should be focusing upon first, and have a time plan. Because when I hear that you are going to fix SSL3, the Poodle vulnerability, in 6 months, you're going to have a problem. I cannot accept that the head of compliance of a major institution turns around to the board, to the chief security officer, and tells them that it won't be a problem if I fix the Poodle vulnerability in a year. I don't accept it. I don't accept it because they are responsible for what's going to happen. Again, a lot of people don't know this, but there is this. And if you have never heard of this, you should. Key performance indicators. Those basically are business metrics used to evaluate factors crucial to the success of an organization. But there are different types of key performance indicators that you should look upon. And when you're doing your work, when you're dealing with different projects, especially in the NHS, those things are there, but no one is looking at them. If they were looking at those things, they would have taken a completely different approach. Solutions like Managed Security Operations Center. We're listening to this term lately so many times, right? I'm not here basically to sell SOC, but what I'm trying to tell you is that it has become so affordable that I don't understand why people don't actually considering it. Yes, all solutions are not perfect for everybody. There are solutions that need to be managed, or there are solutions that need to be implemented inside a business, right? Different requirements between a bank, I don't know, a military environment, a nuclear factory, and a shipping company. But these things, the security operation centers, if you find which one is suitable for your business, or if you end up doing a pen test, doing a report, and you need to know what these things can do and recommend it to them, like look into it. If they are in a mess, they should be looking into these things. And the cost is very low nowadays. So in the previous example, if they were to apply the solution, they would see instantly that something is wrong. They will have flags and lights blinking all over the place that something is going to happen. Something is not quite right, basically. Maybe they have prevented it, but maybe the result will be the same, but they will have a lot more time to respond because they will be considering the problem from the moment that it started, not today afterwards, when they were running around trying to understand why the country is down. So, more or less, cyber resiliency strategy, having a cyber resilience strategy, a holistic strategy from different departments, different sectors, has become the next logical step, and it's going to be based on key performance indicators. That's why I had that up there. For defending against the unavoidable evolution of threats. If we're not doing that now, threats are going to progress so much in the future and so fast that we will end up chasing them for no apparent reason. And because we will not never reach them, basically. We will never gonna catch up with them. Defense mechanisms need to constantly counter-evolve against the counter-evolution of emerging threats. And this is something that we need to understand very, very closely, basically. We need to monitor it and we need to understand it very, very well. In order to be able to detect, prevent, respond, recover, and further evolve. Going back to the diagram I saw you earlier on. This type of constant need for scalability and adaptation becomes even more challenging and demanding when it meets complex systems which are also high-value targets. So, jumping up on the cyber evolution train, basically, we need to move beyond outdated solutions and ask the right questions. With Equifax, the CEO went online, I don't know if you've seen that, and he said that they're taking all the necessary steps to deal with the breach. He sounded like they're taking above and beyond steps in order to deal with what happened. He was misinformed. If you watch the video, he was misinformed. Because what they told him to say in this video basically is the standard approach to responding to a breach. They didn't do anything more than anyone would have done. They have to offer free identity theft checks. They have to do the calls. They have to pay for the losses. They have to do the forensic investigator. They have to report the breach. They haven't done anything above and beyond. Basic steps. So it's very interesting to look at the video and see that the CEO still thinks they're doing something really, really awesome trying to respond to this. And I don't know if you've heard that they knew about the attack, and this is allegedly, for now it's allegedly, right? So don't take me wrong. But they have 3 executives, and before the attack become public, they start dumping their stock. So it's a court case now if those guys actually knew about the attack, and before they informed anyone else or the authorities, they start dumping their stock market, their stocks, basically. Because the price of the company started going down. Their shares started to fall tremendously. Up to what level of risk should be considered acceptable? Very crucial question. Because sometimes it comes down to people that are making the decisions. I'll tell you another story. How many of you know the OWASP Top 10? Come on. OWASP Top 10? No, I'm not by heart. If you heard of it. Right? OWASP Top 10. Right. OWASP Top 10 is 10 simple things that you need to check when you have a web application. When you have a website that does something, basically. Right? If it's an e-commerce website, anything. To make sure that it's not vulnerable to SQL injection, to make sure that it's not vulnerable to XSS, to make sure that your APIs are secure, to make sure that you don't have unprotected redirects, things like that. You're not vulnerable to cross-site request forgery. 10 steps. That's the standard, basically, when it comes to the security of web applications. So I was having this conversation with the CISO once, and he told me two things that I could never thought about it. I could never think someone would actually say these things to me. He said to me, you know this, you security people, you're not doing your work very well because you don't understand the business needs. What do you mean by that? His idea there, he said, I know how to fix the problems and understand the business needs, and I understand the level of risk. Okay, can you please elaborate? Can you please explain this to me? He said, you know OWASP Top 10, for example. Yes. The problem is with OWASP Top 10. With OWASP Top 10, when you do it, I'm taking a level of risk. I have a level of risk left, even though if you do the OWASP Top 10. The solution is to do OWASP Top 3, and then I'm taking again a risk, but it's a little bit bigger. Do you see what I mean? Like, if you are about to leave your house, you lock the door, you check the windows, and you check if the hob is on, you know, the fire in your kitchen. So the guy was telling me that you don't have to do all these three things and take you 2 days to complete a security assessment. You can do it very fast, but just leave the house and just check if the door is locked. Don't worry about the rest. Most of the time, it won't be a problem. So I turned around and I asked him, do you realize in what level of risk you are exposing the company if this is your approach, if this is your understanding? And this is where the two amazing answers came. You need to be a very highly executive in order to think these things. His first response was, if the breach happens, most likely I won't be with the company. I will be somewhere else. So it's not my problem. Right, very ethical guy. Second answer, if I'm still with the company and you get into a room as a security expert and I get into the room as the chief security officer of the company and we're having a discussion with the board and the CEO, who do you think he's going to believe, you or me? Pretty ethical, isn't he? Right? Amazing guy. And then these things, of course, they don't go online. These things, when you have a breach, when a company gets breached, those discussions never happen. We're talking about vulnerabilities. Oh, it was like a minor thing. We're not talking about the responsibility of people that they took or they didn't took some actions, and that's the result at the end of the day. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's not one or two-dimensional problem. It's an n-dimensional problem, and that's why we're talking about you need to understand the cyber resilience today, to have an open mind. That's why I wanted to give you this talk in this kind of manner, to help you think from a different perspective and start thinking outside the box, basically. Because you need to protect yourselves. Because that kind of CISO, if you ever meet this guy, or someone who thinks like that, you're gonna do your work is gonna be up to amazing standards, and he's gonna blame you that you didn't solve the problem that he should have solved 6 months ago or 8 months ago. So you don't wanna go into a discussion with this guy. You see where I'm going with it? Demonstrate due diligence, which means basically to avoid claims of negligence. You need to understand what it means, due diligence. It means that you need to demonstrate that you took the necessary steps throughout the year, for example. And this is what GDPR kind of is trying to do. It's trying to force companies, because they're going to be afraid of the final fine, right, the cost at the end of the day, that they need to do the pen test, for example, once per year, but every month you need to do your patching, you need to do this, you need to do the other thing, to ensure that if the breach actually happens and you stand in front of the judge, you have to demonstrate that you were taking the necessary actions throughout the year, and not just one pen test per year just to tick the box that you did it and then you were on holidays. Preferably to Greece, because we have economic problems. Consider cyber insurance. But again, this is not the get out of jail card. Cyber insurance is there to help you when you've done everything right and something went wrong. So you can demonstrate legally also that you've done everything that you could do throughout the year. Something went wrong with a 0 day, something was really bad, something wasn't your actually fault. You've done anything you could do, and cyber insurance will help you to get back on track, so your company won't become bankrupt overnight. It will help you. It's not a get out of jail card, though. So if you haven't done what you should do, cyber insurance won't help you. And I don't know if you heard about this case in Boston, Massachusetts, where basically there was a company that it was attacked by CEO fraud. I don't know if you heard this kind of thing. It's basically when you send an email pretending to be the CEO, for example, to the CFO, to the Chief Financial Officer. You have to send this amount of money, this amount of Bitcoins to this account there really fast. You need to do it in the next 10 minutes. I'm closing a deal, but we need to give them that money because for XXX reasons, right? So that company actually sent $1.2 million through Bitcoins to that account because they believed on that email. They didn't have cybersecurity awareness training. They should look into this. What happened is, the company said, no, not to worry, we'll have cyber insurance, they'll pay us the money back. The insurance did not pay them back. The company went broke because the insurance said, you actually sent the money. You read the email, it was so obvious that it was fake, and you just sent the money to someone. I'm not gonna pay you for being stupid, basically, right? I don't wanna use any other words. Anyway, coming to an end, having a dynamic and equally involving resilience plan, capable of responding to evolving threats, which also allow you to stay within budget. Basically, look at the problem in a holistic way, understand what the problem is, look what you need to prioritize, and this holistic approach, by knowing what are the technologies out there, place them in the right spots, will allow people to stay within budget. Otherwise, you end up with penetration testers that they need to pen test 700 IP addresses in 5 days, which is humanly impossible, but the CISO tells you, of course you can do it. Just do something. We need to tick the box. But it's your signature at the end of the day in the security report. So, conclusions. Cybersecurity skills gap. I can go on and on that. You know, the industry at the moment is looking for cyber unicorns, right? Everybody's talking about the cybersecurity skills gap, but I want you to understand that when you go out there and you look for jobs, most of the time, there isn't a cybersecurity or security-related job description. Companies have something else on their job description that includes a little bit of security. So we do have the experts, we do have the security professionals, but most of the time those guys are expected to become pen testers, and that's it. Which you can do that with training, with simple training. Sometimes it doesn't even require to have a mindset. But when you want to be in security, and when you have the mindset of security, you need to go above and beyond that. So these kind of people need to be utilized by the companies and by the people who are conducting interviews in the right way and be employed in the right positions. Because when you go into an interview and your interviewer goes through a checklist that has nothing to do with your positions and your skills and doesn't ask you, tell me your achievements, tell me something that you did and you are proud of it, and they ask you, what is the OWASP Top 10 by heart, which you can Google it with I'm feeling lucky button, that interview, basically you should walk out of that interview. And it's the company's loss that doesn't check that this guy is capable of conducting the interviews the right way. Because most of the times, the checklist and the interviews are being directed by the HR department that has no clue about if you are capable of doing things or not. Right? There is no copying, pasting GitHub without understanding what the damn thing is doing. It doesn't make you a programmer, I'm sorry. It makes you a good guy for the CISO to show that you did something within a day, but the amount of the problems that you're introducing by not understanding the code, it's tremendous. You are going to bring the company down. And again, other scenarios, find me other afterwards, I'll tell you many more stories. Ticking the compliance box does not prevent a potential breach. And this needs to be a statement from your side as well. The dark web does not sleep, basically. It doesn't have office hours. However, cyber criminals are not smarter than you guys. And I hope, again, I hope there isn't a cyber criminal among you guys. I do believe that you see the ethical side of these things, and you take pride about being the ethical guy, or girl, obviously. Listen to your security professionals, to your friends and colleagues, and I think I've run out of battery. Oh, damn it. So, yeah, basically, I hope it comes back. I have just a couple of points, but we can go through the questions. I'll just have a couple of points. But basically, that was about it. I mean, that was the talk about. And I hope you really enjoyed it and you understood how I was trying to pass the idea and the problem to you and to understand what's going on. And, yeah, sorry for that. Things happened. Yep, done. Should be there in a second. Yes, so, yeah, listen to your security professional and get advice from third party. Make it difficult for cyber criminals to target you for fun and profit. Have you ever heard of stock market manipulation? Right? Look it up. Basically what happens, you have a company, maybe you're a business owner, and somebody decides that they want to make money in the fast exchange market. Right? Cyber criminals haven't thought about it yet, or they don't really know how to manipulate it. They think about pennies, not the dollars. They're going for a ransomware, which is stupid at the end of the day to be vulnerable to ransomware. And there is something else that you can make millions within minutes. Right? What they do, they target you, they target the company, they dump an amount of passwords online, and they claim that they are from your company, that it has been hacked. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's false. In the meantime, with the next few hours, your stock market goes down. They have make a bet in the fast stock exchange that the market will go down in your stock exchange, and they make money. This is the cyber crime of the future, and we're talking about ransomware. You know the complexity of your systems, and basically better than anyone who is going to attack it. So if you have this knowledge, basically use it to your advantage. And reputation damages and fines, you need to have it under consideration, because if you have a business or if you are consulting for a business, they need to understand that they're going to go out of business if they don't take your advice on the security of their systems. And that was it, and thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption of the power. So any questions, I guess? Any questions? Yeah, I think there is.
Hello.
Hello.
It should be, yeah.
Okay, in your experience, how many companies do employ all of these advice? Because in my experience, that's about 0%.
I can't say it out loud, but yeah, that's about the number. Exactly. You're spot on.
Jesus.
Yeah. Which is really annoying. It is really annoying because it's not that hard. I mean, there is SANS top 20 critical controls, right? You need to do this. It's simple. It's a list of hardware and software. It starts with simple steps. Nobody's doing it. Nobody's heard of it. Yeah, exactly. And that's about 0. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that they're more interested in protection against fire or flood than this.
And to look good to their CEO, you know, to go in the morning and say good morning, say ciao.
Yeah,
ciao, Bella.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But in okay, I think there are other people.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Well, I was debating whether to say this, but after that, of course, I have to. Yeah. So it seems to me that it's a fundamental issue with the structure of companies, or something that does not encourage, does not have an incentive to do security properly. And so, is it even worth trying to help them?
Okay. It's still recording because I want to say something. Can we cut it here?
Like, seriously, I don't trust any of my data if it goes through a company. I don't trust any of my data if it goes through a company. It has to be run by volunteers or friends or something like that. Otherwise,
Can I answer to your question after the talk? But yeah, you were spot on. They don't take measures. Yeah, let me answer. Yeah, I'll answer your question, except if I know that we're not recording anymore. Yeah.
So you mentioned SSL3 as one of an issue, and I have a feeling that these things which are easily testable, like you enter ssltest.com, enter the company name and .tld, and you got that it is C-, while SSL 3.0 is typically hardly exploitable on a big scale. So what do you suggest as a method of convincing companies to not prioritize fixing issues that are easily testable, although does not have a big impact, as opposed to just CVE 2017-001 or something like that, which has a really high impact but doesn't have a simple homepage where anyone can just enter the company name, but it has a much better problem?
You are actually giving me an opportunity to answer to that question as well in an indirect way. So my suggestion, which again, my full answer will be afterwards, my suggestion is that the people who are actually making the decisions high up in the chain, if they have doubts of what's going on in their company and they want to consider security in a taking it seriously, they should ask these questions to their people who are responsible about security. So, as I said earlier on, if you are the head of compliance or if you are the head of security and you cannot distinguish to fix what you just said, simply your question is perfect. If they cannot answer your question to the CEO, to the guy that is to the board, and justify their answer, not just this is what we do because I'm accepting the risk. If they cannot do that, they should basically fire them and hire someone else. And it's better to hire a MSc student in security to do their job than actually someone who has just been doing politics for 20 years instead of security. I don't know if this answers a little bit. I still think it won't help. Yeah, I will talk about it later on. Yeah, sure.
There is a big problem that we have that many companies have not one person responsible for cybersecurity. Like in a hospital, that 85% of healthcare institution, they have one or no one who is responsible for cybersecurity. How we can solve that problem?
There is no responsible, but who is responsible for making sure that security is taken seriously? Because someone has made the decision not to post cybersecurity jobs.
But there is no one who is doing it. Say it's not my decision. Board say we don't know, and everything is like we don't know.
Someone is responsible at the end of the day to sign. Sorry?
So everyone's responsible.
Yes, but
like, not individually you can change it.
And how a cybersecurity community can change that?
The cybersecurity community can change the culture,
yes.
First of all. Changing the rules of individual companies, the private sector or the public sector, it's almost near to impossible. But waiting for the culture to change, to make sure that the NHS, for example, it won't get hacked again because they are taking the simple steps in the security. We cannot just magically expect this to happen. Obviously, someone needs to make a decision and say, we need to spend X amount of money on this thing. So, that's it. Any other questions? I think we need to give the room to the next person. So, I hope you enjoyed it.